This is Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body with Dr. Schuyler. Discover how your thoughts manifest disease and what you can do about it. Here's your host, Dr. Schuyler.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body. Today, we are going over what are automatic negative thoughts, ants, and why are they so hard to stop. So back in the 1960s, a psychotherapist was working with patients with depression, and he began to notice the stream of automatic, subconscious, negative thoughts that kept popping up. And there are thoughts like, I can't do anything right, I'm just a loser. So we coined the term automatic negative thoughts, ants. What I want to start introducing this concept of people, and if you listen to past episodes about attachment style and emotions and limbic system, I want to start introducing the concept of what about automatic loving thoughts, alts? If we can create a world of ants, why can't we create a world of secure attachment style and alts? Why can't we all collectively, as a species, one by one, begin to cultivate and nourish within us a secure attachment style and automatic loving thoughts and dialogue that create wellness? And the question that led me to the wellness process, years ago was, why can't I create wellness? And a thought process that came to me not too long ago was, why can't I create loving thoughts? Why is I can create negative thoughts so much, but why can't I create loving thoughts? And I notice whenever, and this is actually part of how the brain is wired, something called the reticular activating system, the RAS. When you ask your brain a question, it will spend the entire day scanning for an answer. It just wants to solve the equation you presented it. So I'm going to challenge you all to begin the concept of how do we begin automatic loving thoughts? How do we pass it on to our children? How do we pass it on to our partners, our friends, but more importantly to ourselves? So to get into this, I'm going to get a little bit of a backstory just about me and how this alt came to be and what you can begin to do about it. So I am a clinical hypnotherapist. I've been doing hypnosis. I started off as a free diver in my 20s, and I would hold my breath underwater, about 4 or 5 minutes. And without even knowing it, I would go on to say the hypnosis to lower my heart rate really, really low. So I can go hang out 120 feet or so and just hang with the fishies. Then I gave birth under hypnosis, in 2009, and it was actually fantastic. I felt no pain and just went brilliantly. I went up and walked around literally 30 seconds after. I've used hypnosis on my patients. I've used hypnosis on my own children. My 6-year-old one time went and grabbed my curling iron after I said, don't touch it, it's hot. So what do you think she did? She had to touch it. So I immediately put her in a state of hypnosis, and I imagined her. She loves pigs at the time, but I imagined her on a ski slope because we love skiing. And there was a bunch of little piglets sliding down on their bellies down the ski slope, and it was ice cold. And I put her into this fun imagination of piggies everywhere, and they're sliding down the ski slope, and it's so cold, and they're wearing winter scarves. And I said, and you're so cold, and your hand is in the snow. Well, this is based on evidence from many workshops I had attended on the power of the mind for burns. So she woke up the next day. Well, she was shivering. She got so cold because she imagined she was in the snow. And the piggies were over there. She was laughing. And she woke up the next day and not a single mark on her hand. And this is evidence-based. And some brilliant hypnotherapists long before me developed these processes. So through the power of the mind, she created a sense where her hand had no need to have an inflammatory response to a burn. And she was so cold, she was shivering, just by the use of her imagination. I have cut my hand cutting an avocado. And I use the power of my mind of, hey, stop bleeding. You don't need to have an inflammatory response. Go ahead and clear up. And there's no cut later on. I do this oftentimes when I'm riding my horse. I ride without a saddle. I do natural horsemanship. So when we go into a canter or even a gallop, I will get linked up with my horse into a theta brainwave state, a state of hypnosis. And I link up, her and I link up our heart rates, I think. That's my imagination. I don't know if it isn't hers. But we start syncing our breaths together. I go into state of hypnosis and get to the zone. So hypnotherapist, the ones that have been doing it for a while will tell you whenever we go through a clinical hypnotherapy session with our patients or clients, we ourselves go into trance as well. And we can begin to experience, in a sense, the same thing our patients are experiencing. Begin to experience their energy. We can feel blocks. Our mirror neurons link up with theirs. We get on the same vibrational plane. So it's very common for hypnotherapists to get into trance with a person. And the best way I can describe hypnotherapy, and I'll explain why I'm talking about hypnotherapy in a minute. If you're driving a car and you look up, you're like, oh, where am I? You feel lost. You were in a state of hypnosis. Or you were watching a movie and 2 hours go by. You're like, wow, what happened to that 2 hours? You were in a state of hypnosis. All it is a highly focused sense of attention and awareness on one thing. And a good way to describe it is if the sun has rays everywhere, but if you would take a magnifying glass and focus on one beam of sun, that's like hypnosis. It's just a highly focal point of awareness. So why am I telling you this? Theta brainwaves is where I began my journey to healing. And theta brainwaves is a state of hypnosis. And I imagine this little Mario guy from Donkey Kong painting in my myelin sheath where there were lesions and holes. So I used guided imagery on the journey to begin to heal myself. I used guided imagery and hypnosis to heal people have been on stomach transplant list. People with sepsis have died a couple of times, anaphylactic for mast cell activation. The power of the mind through hypnosis, even meditation, even conscious awareness to treat all these diseases. But what does this have to do with automatic negative thoughts? First episode, we talked about we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts. Typically, 20,000 of those are negative. So all day long, we have a dialogue of negative self-talk. But I want to go back to how were those ants created? How are they born? How are they nourished? How are they being fed for years and years and years? So we're going to rewind to the first 7 years of life. Now we know adverse childhood experiences is linked to disease. So the first 7 years of life, we are programmed. And the programming creates ants. 95% of our life comes from those programs in our subconscious mind the first 7 years of life. So every day, about only 5% of life, you are using your conscious mind, which is creativity. So 95% of our life is coming from the programs of our childhood. How we lived our life the first 7 years significantly impacts whatever ants you come marching out of your mind 20 years later. So every human throughout life goes through a download of hypnosis. The brain of a child under the age of 7 is in a lower vibrational frequency. When you put wires on a person's head, EEG, and they're reading thoughts. They're literally reading thoughts. It's reading brain activity. So a child under the age of 7 has a lower vibrational consciousness. It's called a theta brainwave. Theta brainwave is one of 5 types of electrical impulses that your brain produces. It happens when you're lightly sleeping, when you're falling asleep at night, you're in a deep state of relaxation. This is why when a child plays imagination like a tea party, it's real to them. When they have a mud pie, that's real to them. This is inferring, hopefully, that these aren't sticky iPad kids. These are kids who are out playing, living life, skating their knee, playing on the monkey bars. A kid that rides a bike tends to be riding a horse with a broomstick. The body can't tell if you're imagining something, you're experiencing it. That's why when you're sleeping, you're having theta brainwaves when you're dreaming, and you wake up and you lost your teeth. All your brain did was imagine something in theta brainwaves, and you felt like you lost your teeth. Or if you jump up out of bed and you feel like you're falling from a cliff, all you did was imagine it in theta brainwave state. So your body is reacting as if you're falling off a cliff. That's why when we dream, it feels real. The body cannot tell if you're experiencing the cliff or you're in theta brainwave imagining the cliff. So experts believe that theta brainwaves plays a significant role in processing information and making memories. And your brain is constantly producing these bursts of electrical activities. Theta brainwaves is imagination. As a child, your developmental process was crucial for your growth, all aspects of your life. So your child is marked by significant periods of mental, emotional, psychosocial developmental changes. You learn to create, socialize, explore your environment. And during this time, the first 7 years of life, all while you're doing it, theta brainwaves plays a significant role in your development. So in just the first 7 years of life, child's development is essential for the formation of who they will become. So when you provide an environment that encourages imagination, play, creativity, emotional self-expression, ability to solve problems, ability to increase self-efficacy, effective, safe communication, individual skill development, setting them up for success for their future core deep beliefs. If you listen to the previous podcast, now you can put the dots together why attachment styles are so significant and lay the groundwork for automatic negative thoughts, ants. So the state of consciousness develops from age 1 to 7. The theta brainwave state plays an essential role during an era where theta programming is critical. But what if this programming goes bad? What if this journey the first 7 years of life is met with criticism, contempt, avoidance, dismissive, anxiousness? What belief systems are formed then? And these core belief systems, I'm not good enough, I'm not important enough, those create ants. Ants are born from core beliefs. So why we can't reconcile how we think, why we can't stop feeling invalidated is because we have ants that were programmed into us the first 7 years of life. So when I started unpacking all this, I had to start with, where did I get the ants? Why did I believe I wasn't important? Why did I believe I wasn't valuable? You have to look at attachment style. So the personal journey, and I say this to hopefully something will relate to it, because sometimes I think, the darkest nights of the soul have the greatest lessons of wisdom. I don't think that I know that. So you can't heal from a wheelchair to 2 hours of yoga without doing a lot of really, really hard work. So looking, how I got to this place, I had to really sit back and analyze, what are my automatic negative thoughts? What was my attachment style? And what can I learn from this? And so what I developed over the years, my first 7 years of life, was I've come to realize I was not important, not lovable. And I really, truly, honestly believed I deserved to be beat up, yelled at. It didn't even dawn on me to ask for help, getting beat up daily all the time by my brother. It never entered my mind to tell my mom and dad, hey, I'm getting tickled, tortured, and choked out. You just don't do that in the 70s and 80s. That's just not something you communicate. So I thought it was really, really normal to get beat up and not feel protected and not feel safe. And it wasn't an option to go tell mom and dad. And if I did, I remember just being told, you go figure it out, go solve your problems. We're not solving it for you. And I think I really do. I don't think I know if they knew the damage that was being done, they would have intervened more. But oftentimes they'd be like, hey, I just, if I did say something, hey, I just got choked out or I got tickle tortured and I might have gotten really, really sick from it, because that's actually very, very cruel to tickle torture somebody. It's guise into humor, but it's actually very extremely painful. I would get blamed. Well, what did you do to provoke him? What did you do to make him do that to you? So then I learned that if I go running and crying and asking for help, that I was then blamed for it. So I just stopped going altogether and just learned to fight better. He was 6 years older than me, so I had to ovary up and figure out how to protect myself more. So you think about automatic negative thought coming in. And one day I came home running and crying to my brother, hey, I got beat up by a neighbor boy that was his age. I was 8. I think the neighbor boy was about 14. My brother said, fight your own battles. I'm not helping you with this. So I went to bed and I cried myself to sleep. I'm like, okay, you got to fight your own battles. You're going to see this 14-year-old boy tomorrow morning. You need to figure this out. And I got the core belief that I'm not worth protecting. I have to figure this out. I have to become hyper independent after being avoid dismissed. Go back to attachment styles. Remember, it's not an option in the 70s, 80s to go to parents. That's just not how it worked. So I'm not important enough to protect. I'm not worth it to protect. So I get into this very strong fight response, protect myself. I remember at 5 years old, now I'm laying the groundwork how ants are formed, how disease is formed. I was 5 years old and I get pushed off a swing and I go run to my brother who's 6 years older. Hey, I just got pushed off the swing. I'm not going to help you solve this problem. That's not my problem. You got pushed off the swing. It sounds like your problem. What did you do to piss them off was the question. I'm 5. I mean, like a 10-year-old pissed me off or something. So early on, I learned that what I'm experiencing is not valuable. It's not important. I'm not worth someone saving. I'm not worth feeling safe in life. So I just worked out. I practiced fighting with my pillow. I just learned to overcome it. Back then it was get grit, get resilience, toughen up, stick it out, learn to survive. And we were upper middle class. Like this was just a normal white family environment. We had dinner every night when the lights went, when the street lights went off. Mom cooked dinner, stay at home mom. But it's normal for an 80s baby to be jump scared every day and to have a sibling under the bed grabbing your feet and terrifying you. But think about this. Attachment style, you begin to feel unsafe. You begin to live in a chronic automatic negative thought. You begin to be in fight or flight, constantly jump scared or lack of a secure attachment. So what would happen is I remember being told in the first 7 years of life that I literally was a mistake. You were never to be born. No one wanted you. You're really ugly. And I used to always be sung, UGLY, you ain't got no alibi. So this is imprinted in the first 7 years of life. And I was a pleasant surprise, but my mom had spent 6 years praying for another baby. So that was not the truth. She made bargainings with God to get pregnant again. I was a huge blessing to her life. But the truth that I was sold was, you are not wanted. You're a surprise, and we wish you weren't here. So when you think about what's being programmed in me, whatever the reality is not what's happening on my end. So I'm beginning to think I'm not important. So this is where cognitive dissonance comes into place. You're getting beat up, told I'm not important. Then you go to sit down at dinner and you have to sit down and say grace and, hey, pass the salt. After 10 minutes earlier, you were choked out and told you're not important. Cognitive dissonance begins to play a role in automatic negative thoughts. You begin to create this sense of distance from self. What is reality? What is truth? So this cognitive dissonance of having to befriend and pretend to be close to people who harm you, it creates this attachment style that you then carry on into adulthood. So people often say, I have a fear of abandonment. I like to say I couldn't be abandoned because I thought I was never wanted in the first place. So you can't abandon something that's never wanted. So experts have emphasized that the early years of a child's life are crucial for establishing foundation of emotional, social, cognitive, mental development. And that the research indicates that early childhood experiences shape trajectory through life. This is why automatic negative thoughts are so hard to get rid of. You, me, everyone was literally brainwashed and programmed the first 7 years of life walking around in a state of theta hypnosis. Whether it is the reality or not, I was so loved, I was so wanted. But that's not what my little brain heard. That's not what imprinted. My parents were very loving. They stayed together till the day my dad died. But my perception became skewed based on what I was told the first 7 years of life. So you can take a wild guess how that worked out for me later on down the line for partners, for men. My kid's dad is not included in this. He's fantastic. He's a fantastic father. But it had to go through many dark nights of the soul, learning these lessons, that a partner may show up in a unicorn suit, but they have a dark soul. That learning not to abandon self, learning to understand attachment styles, that it is my birthright to uninstall the wiring these first 7 years. I was not a mistake. I was planned. I am worthy of not being mistreated. I had to create a method to overcome the ants in order to survive. Just like I had to find a way to defend myself against a 14-year-old boy beating me to a pulp when I'm 8. And I was a little 8-year-old, wasn't some big 8-year-old. I was little, even if I was big, not even entitled to that. I had to come up with a way to overcome what's imprinted the first 7 years of life. So if you think your 60,000 thoughts, 20 to 30 to 40 are automatic negative that are nourishing what you were programmed the first 7 years of your life. So I like to ask myself the question, why can't I uninstall this? Why can't I starve the ants? Why can't I create alts? Now I'm triggering the RAS in my brain to search and solve this problem. Meta-analysis shows through research and clinical trials that theta brainwaves play a significant role in learning, memory, childhood. To learn alts is actually really, really easy. It's the way I started learning how to heal myself. I would imagine Mario painted in my myelin sheath as I fell asleep at night. I imagined him painting in my myelin sheath as I woke up in the morning. Did the same thing with alts. I started writing down my automatic loving thoughts before I went to bed at night. I love you so much, Skylar. I love you. You are wanted. You are important. You are valuable. I did this for a while. And first thing, I wake up at 4 a.m. I don't get out of bed at 4. I wake up at 4 and I start my meditations and my imprinting for the day because I'm still in this coming to terms with consciousness, I call it. I'm still in theta brainwave. So I set my intent. Usually it's something along the lines of I surrender to thy will today, or what great things will happen to me today. And I will search my first thoughts of the day, what to set my intent with. And one morning I woke up and the first thing that popped in my mind, I love you so much. I jumped out of bed. I'm like, what did you just think? And I realized I just had my first automatic loving thought. I didn't have to create it. I didn't have to search for my intent for the day. I didn't have to come up with a what or why question to stimulate the RAS. It was an automatic loving thought that I generated from the 5%. Rewiring my brain, rewiring my body's chemistry, rewiring my cells. You can create automatic loving thoughts. There's two main reasons why we have automatic negative thoughts. So the first off, it's perfectly normal to have negative thoughts. So just stop beating yourself up right now having negative thoughts. They exist to keep you safe. And if you look at our ancestors, our prehistoric ancestors, they were constantly on the lookout for threats, fixing problems, and they were learning from their mistakes. Imagination is one of the best qualities of being a human, and we use it to imagine potential threats and problems to keep us alive. Negative thoughts are normal and needed, but the capacity to imagine threats becomes compensatory and overcompensating and addictive, literally addictive. And it begins to work against us by turning our mind into this negative thought generator. The second reason why you have automatic negative thoughts, based in childhood, the first 7 years. It is evidence that 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So think about the first 7 years of life, whatever attachment style that you had, whatever vibes you were catching. You'll have almost the same thoughts today as you had yesterday, and you'll have them again tomorrow. Imagine a world where 90% of our thoughts were automatic loving. How different the world would be. If you woke up and you had an automatic loving thought of I love you, your whole world would be different. If you do something often enough, if you think about your negative thoughts, you create a very deep neural pathway. The more you do it, the stronger the connection become. It's how habits are formed. That's why they're so dang hard to break the habits. Ants are normal. They exist to keep us safe, but it doesn't mean they have to harm us. So next week, we will continue this discussion on how there are different types of ants and how these ants alter our brain chemistry, which increase our risk for neurodegenerative diseases, and how to counterbalance these ants with entry-level alts, automatic loving thoughts that can create change in the brain, change in brain chemistry, and begin to heal us on a cellular level. I do have a retreat and online workshop coming up in the fall. If you're interested, you can find it at drskyler.net. You can send an email, and on that website, you can get free downloads. And I also have a monthly newsletter coming out, and I have a couple of new free downloads, as well as 2 books coming out this year, at the end of the year. One book is Empower Your Child to Heal, and this is all this really cool stuff we're talking about, all the different ingredients in the mind-body connection. And the second book coming out is Empower Yourself to Heal. So there's really getting into these things, the mind-body connection that no one's really talking about. I look forward to continuing this discussion next week, and abundant blessings, beautiful souls. Thank you for your time. I feel so grateful you have listened to the end. When we begin to understand how our body manifests stress, trauma, depression, anxiety, and even unexpressed emotions, we then create a space, a bandwidth in our minds to begin to heal our bodies. Healing is a decision, and I am grateful for yours. Abundant blessings, Dr. Schuyler.
To learn more about the work Dr. Schuyler is doing, please visit drschuyler.net. That's drskYler.net. And remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you like to listen.
Produced by Audavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.